Before Game 2 of the 1995 Western Conference Finals, the NBA held an MVP awards ceremony right there on the floor of the Alamo Dome. 35,000 people in San Antonio, David Robinson, their guy, their admiral, raising a trophy that had his name on it. And sitting on the Houston Rockets bench, watching the whole thing, was Hakeem Olajuwon. Kenny Smith, sitting next to him, leaned over. Yo, that didn't make you upset? Because it made Kenny upset. The defending champion Rockets were sitting right there and the league wasn't even acknowledging that Hakeem existed. That he was great, that he had a great season. But Hakeem, being Hakeem, just shook his head. No, Kenny, he deserves the award. He deserves the award. Then he went out and put on one of the greatest individual performances in playoff history. 41 points, 16 rebounds, the Rockets won by 10. And afterward, walking into the locker room, Hakeem turned to Kenny Smith and said, "I am going to his house to get my MVP." Now here's the part of the story that people always get wrong. They call it a robbery. They say the voters stole the MVP from Hakeem, but I want you to push back on that because the truth is actually way more interesting than a simple robbery narrative. David Robinson genuinely had a case, and understanding exactly why he won and what Hakeem did with that information is what makes the whole thing so special. You have to understand what the MVP award actually meant that year and why it lit a fire that nobody could put out. The 1994-95 San Antonio Spurs were the best team in basketball, 62 wins, 20 losses, best record in the league. David Robinson led them there, averaging 27.6 points, 10.8 rebounds, and 3.2 blocks per game, shooting 53% from the floor. He played all 81 games. He was everywhere. The voting wasn't even close. Robinson received 73 first-place votes and 901 total points. Shaquille O'Neal was second with 605, Karl Malone third, Patrick Ewing fourth, and Hakeem Olajuwon, the reigning MVP, the reigning champion, the reigning Finals MVP, finished fifth with one first-place vote, 147 total points. Here's the thing that made Rockets players furious. Pull up the numbers. Hakeem, 27.8 points, 10.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 3.4 blocks, 51.7% from the field. And David Robinson's numbers. By the raw stats, those two players were virtually identical. Hakeem had more assists, more blocks, a slight edge in scoring. Robinson shot a higher percentage and played 9 more games. But here's what nobody talked about. There's a reason the Rockets won only 47 games, and it had nothing to do with Hakeem Olajuwon. The 94-95 Rockets entered the season as defending champions. They won their first 9 games, looked dominant, then things started to fall apart. Vernon Maxwell, mercurial, explosive starting guard, became a distraction. He would eventually be granted an indefinite leave of absence during the playoffs themselves. That is how bad it got. In February, the Rockets traded their starting power forward Otis Thorpe to the Portland Trail Blazers. In exchange, they got Clyde Drexler, Hakeem's old college teammate from the University of Houston, plus Tracy Murray. On paper, an upgrade, but the chemistry takes time. The team went 18-18 after the trade. By the end of the regular season, the defending champions were the 6th seed, written off, dismissed, counted out before the playoffs even started. And yet, Hakeem Olajuwon played all 72 games, never stopped, never complained, just put up the same numbers he always did while everything around him was on fire. If you are looking for a reason the Rockets won 47 games instead of 62, it wasn't the center, it was everything else. The Rockets got to the Western Conference Finals the hard way. They beat Utah in 5 games after trailing 2-1, then they came back from a 3-1 deficit against the 59-win Phoenix Suns. In the second round, against Charles Barkley, they won Game 7 on the road. By the time Houston reached San Antonio to face the Spurs, They had already done things that no one believed possible, and nobody still believed in them. The Spurs had the best record in the league, they had the MVP, they had Dennis Rodman, who had 30 rebounds against the Rockets in a regular season game, they had a deep bench, Doc Rivers, Terry Cummings, Chuck Person, they had home court, they had everything. But they also had to stop Hakeem Olajuwon. Over the years, those two men had built one of the great quiet rivalries in NBA, centers, Nigerian and American, both elite and dominant. The Spurs held a 16-11 edge in their head-to-head regular season meetings, but the playoffs are a different game. Robinson was diplomatic, respectful, he wasn't going to talk trash about the series. We are in the middle of this battle and it's going to be hard to celebrate anything right now. This is an incredible honor and I don't think it is going to sink into my head for some time. He was talking about the MVP, but the trophy hadn't even been formally handed over yet. That was coming right before Game 2. I need you to actually picture this moment. The Rockets are already up 1-0, they stole Game 1 on the road, and the NBA decided that the perfect time to hand David Robinson his MVP trophy was right before Game 2. On his court, in front of his crowd, with Hakeem sitting 12 feet away from the bench, I genuinely don't know if it was bad scheduling of the most unintentionally disrespectful thing in playoff history, but either way, Hakeem turned it into fuel. Game 1 had already gone to Houston, a 1-point road win in the Alamo Dome. The Rockets had already done what they weren't supposed to do. Then came Game 2, May 24, 1995, and before the opening tip, the NBA held the ceremony. Right there on the floor, David Robinson received the most valuable player trophy, his trophy, in front of his fans, in front of his team, and in front of Hakeem Olajuwon, who watched it all from the bench with a calm face and, according to Robert Horry, steam coming out of his ears. Dream is looking down there and you could see the steam coming out his ears. He's saying, "That is my trophy." And then the game started. The first half was competitive, the Spurs were in it. The crowd was loud. Then Hakeem Olajuwon opened the third quarter and turned professional basketball into a private humiliation. He made his first 4 shots, missed a couple, made his next 4, added a free throw, 9 for 12 in the quarter. He scored the Rockets' first 8 points off the half before Clyde Drexler even touched the ball. He produced the next 8 on his own. Jump hooks, fadeaways, a dazzling spin move off the pump fake that left Robinson frozen. There was one play in particular. Hakeem caught the ball on the baseline, cradled it, waited for Robinson to commit, hit him with a pump fake so vicious that the Admiral was completely in the air, and by the time Robinson came back down, the ball was already through the net. Pure artistry. The Admiral's only real defense would have been to use his new MVP trophy as a weapon. He scored 19 points in that third quarter alone. I mean, he played great, he was awesome. I thought I was playing pretty good defense on him and he just made the shots, tough shots. The Rockets led by 13, they couldn't shake the Spurs entirely. Chuck Person hit a 3 in the fourth to give San Antonio an 82-80 lead, their first advantage since the first quarter. Hakeem got the Rockets back on track with a quick two-handed dunk, then with his signature turnaround fadeaway. Those 2 baskets ignited a 14-3 Rockets run that broke the game open. Final, Houston 106, San Antonio 96, Hakeem Olajuwon 41 points, 16 rebounds. Afterward, Robinson could barely explain it with a straight face. I don't even know how can I say it with a straight face, but most of the time I thought I defended him pretty well. He played as well as I've seen anyone play in a long time. 2-0 Houston in San Antonio. The series came back to Houston for games 3 and 4 and the Spurs refused to die. In game 3, Hakeem had 40 points, the Spurs still won. Let that sink in. He scored 40 and they still took the game. Game 4 was worse. The Spurs held him to 9 of 24 shooting and won by 22. After the game, Robinson, who had now watched Hakeem to score 41 and 40 in consecutive games, said nothing that would come back to haunt him. I think we figure out what got us here. In these 2 games, our backs were against the wall. You can't be world champions if you can't dig down deep. And then talking specifically about Hakeem, he's only human. He can't score 40 points every game. Series tied at 2, San Antonio had momentum, their crowd believed, Robinson believed, the people of Texas thought the dream was over. They were wrong. He said that. David Robinson, future Hall of Famer, naval officer, one of the most physically gifted centers who ever laced up, said he can't score 40 every game about Hakeem Olajuwon. After 2 games of watching exactly that, I love David Robinson for this, because it tells you he genuinely believed it. He wasn't being arrogant, he was just wrong, and Game 5 was the answer. Game 5, back in San Antonio, he's only human. He can't score 40 points every game. Hakeem scored 42. 19 field goals, 30 attempts. He pulled out every single move he had ever invented and added a few more chapters. He embarrassed the Admiral possession after possession, dream shakes, up and unders, fall-away jumpers, and that devastating pump fake that no center in basketball had ever solved. Final, Hakeem 42, Robinson 22, Houston won by 21. Kenny Smith said a lot of teams will still decide to double Hakeem. They said no. We felt, why should we be so offensively aggressive if Hakeem has his space to work? So he worked. He worked to the fullest degree. The Spurs had no answer. 3-2 Houston, 1 game away. Game 6 came back to Houston. And if Game 2 was the statement, Game 6 was the verdict. Hakeem Olajuwon, 39 points, 17 rebounds, 5 blocks. The Admiral finished with 19 points on 6 of 17 shooting. He missed 2 free throws in the final 2 minutes. He committed a costly turnover when it matters the most. Final score, Houston 100, San Antonio 95, series, Houston 4-2. The Rockets had eliminated the team with the best record in basketball. When it was over, Sam Cassell said what a lot of people had been thinking. Hakeem being selected 5th in the MVP voting is a slap in the face, not to take anything away from David because he had a great year. And Hakeem himself, in true Hakeem fashion, refused to make it about the trophy. I am not in competition with David, that is a trap. I understand he deserved the award this year, thank God that I experienced winning it last year. By the time it was done, the numbers told the story without any editorializing needed. Over 6 games against the one who won the MVP, Hakeem Olajuwon averaged 35.3 points, 12.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4.2 blocks per game. David Robinson, the most valuable player, averaged 23.8 points, 11.3 rebounds, and 2.1 blocks. 6 days after closing out the Spurs, the Houston Rockets went to Orlando and stole the Game 1 from Shaquille O'Neal and the Magic. 7 days later, they completed the sweep. Hakeem was the Finals MVP for the 2nd straight year as a 6th seed, without home court advantage in a single series. After beating 4 teams with at least 50 wins, 3 of them with 55 or more. And that's what kills me about how Hakeem gets talked about today. People will argue Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, and Hakeem's name barely comes up. But this man, in the spring of 1995, sat on a bench and watched someone else receive the MVP that his own teammates thought was his. Then he went out for 6 straight games and made the best player in the NBA look helpless. No drama, no excuses, just Hakeem.